You wake up in your home one morning and everything seems normal. You turn on the TV for the morning news, and they're reporting about a magnitude 7 earthquake that struck somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean early in the morning. You continue getting ready for work and you don't really think too much about it. You've felt smaller earthquakes before when you were living in California, so you go on about your day. Now, let's get to the interesting part. What if there was something brewing beneath the surface that would spell doom for all life on Earth? Would you feel anything before it happened? What if there was a supervolcano hiding underneath the Pacific Ocean that was just shaken awake by the recent earthquake? What if we're in for a Yellowstone-type super eruption? But instead of happening in America, it happens in the ocean. You'd think that wouldn't be any different, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Here's why. Earthquakes happen all the time and are a natural occurrence on our planet. Some are big, some are small. Most are unremarkable and simply register as a minor rumble deep within the Earth. Every now and then, though, we get an earthquake that packs enough of a punch to make headlines around the world. And sometimes these earthquakes can lead to even more disasters, such as volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and landslides. Volcanic eruptions are also natural occurrences on the Earth, but they are far less common than earthquakes. When a volcano erupts, molten lava spills out of a vent and is often accompanied by explosions and ash clouds. The recent earthquake in the Pacific Ocean shook things up literally. The magma chamber beneath the ocean floor had been dormant for thousands of years, but after the earthquake, the pressure was released, causing the magma to bubble to the surface once again. Underwater volcanoes are not all that rare. In fact, scientists have identified over 1,000 potentially active submarine volcanoes scattered across the globe. The vast majority of these underwater volcanoes aren't dangerous to human civilization. Sure, if one were to erupt near a major shipping route, it could cause a disaster by interrupting trade or by damaging important infrastructure. But for the most part, we've coexisted with these volcanoes for thousands of years without much issue. But what happens when one of these dormant volcanoes gets a little angry? After the initial earthquake, the shaking of the magma chamber allowed some of the pressure to escape, but this also created a crack in the top of the magma chamber. This will allow magma to seep through and reach the surface. At first, the rate at which it seeps out is slow, but as time passes, the pressure builds and the leak becomes faster and larger. It might seem like a good thing at first, right? It's just a little water leaking from a hole in the roof. No need to panic. Then again, water isn't the thing that's leaking out. It's molten rock and ash. And the amount of ash filling the air could block the sunlight and cover entire cities. And this is where things start to get really bad. Imagine standing outside during a volcanic eruption. The air grows thick and hot as a thick cloud of ash begins to fill the sky above you. A fine layer of ash starts to fall onto the ground around you, covering the buildings and streets. Then it hits you. The air is suddenly cold, and the sky is dark as the ash blocks the sun. Now imagine being trapped indoors with no way to see out. Then look out the window and notice that the sky has turned black. Look down at the ground and watch as the fine layer of ash quickly turns into a thick coating. Eventually, you'll run out of food and water and you won't be able to survive. When a supervolcano erupts, it sends an incredible amount of ash and debris into the atmosphere. This can block out the sun and cause temperatures to plummet. One study estimates that if the Yellowstone supervolcano were to erupt today, we would experience volcanic winter for several years. But this is just the beginning. As the rain falls, it mixes with the ash and makes it even more deadly. The water dissolves tiny particles in the ash and creates a weak acid. This acid can damage buildings, infrastructure, and crops. People try to stay indoors and wait for the worst to pass, but eventually they'll run out of food and water. If the eruption is big enough, it could kill off a significant portion of the population. Some people may be able to outrun the ash cloud and seek refuge elsewhere, but the air is filled with dangerous gases that can make breathing difficult. The ash is also abrasive and can cause serious respiratory problems. Even if someone manages to avoid the initial explosion and subsequent ash cloud, they still have to deal with the long-term effects of a supervolcanic eruption. The ash cloud eventually makes its way around the globe and blocks out the sun. Plants die, and animals that eat them starve. The ecosystem collapses, and people struggle to survive in the harsh new environment. And unlike a normal volcanic eruption, a supervolcano eruption is catastrophic, devastating entire countries and wiping out entire species. Let's take a look at the eruption of Mount Toba in Indonesia as an example. This eruption was so massive that it caused a second ice age. It happened around 74,000 years ago and unleashed around 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and rock into the air. This caused global temperatures to drop by an average of 3 to 5 degrees Celsius and lasted for several years. Scientists estimate that 90% of all plant and animal species went extinct due to the eruption, but somehow Homo sapiens managed to survive. The population dropped dramatically, and it took thousands of years for life to return to normal. If something like this were to happen today, it could wipe out modern civilization as we know it. Cities would be destroyed, economies would collapse, and the world as we know it would cease to exist. But you might be thinking, it's never going to happen, right? Wrong. It already has, and it's going to happen again. The chances are incredibly slim, but scientists do believe that there is a 6% chance that the La Garita caldera in Colorado will have a super eruption within the next 500,000 years. There is also a 1.3% chance that the Yellowstone supervolcano will erupt in the next 14,000 years. And yes, there are supervolcanoes hiding beneath the Pacific Ocean as well. Yellowstone National Park is home to the largest supervolcano in North America. Its last major eruption occurred around 640,000 years ago and created the Yellowstone caldera, also known as the Great Rift. But this isn't the only supervolcano in the area. Just a few miles away lies the Hebgen caldera, which was formed by a super eruption around 3 million years ago. Both of these supervolcanoes are located on the western side of the North American continent. This means that they are close to the San Andreas fault line, which is responsible for many of the earthquakes that occur in the region. When an earthquake strikes along the San Andreas fault line, it can cause the magma chambers below the surface to become unstable. This can lead to volcanic activity, such as small eruptions or the release of gases and steam. If the earthquake is strong enough, it could trigger a super eruption. So while it's highly unlikely, it's not impossible that an earthquake could trigger a super eruption of Yellowstone or another supervolcano in the area. If Yellowstone were to erupt, it would be disastrous. The surrounding areas would be completely destroyed, and the ash cloud would spread across the United States. But thankfully, it doesn't look like this will be happening anytime soon. The U.S. Geological Survey monitors the volcano closely, and there are no signs of an imminent eruption. Yellowstone isn't the only supervolcano in the United States. In fact, there are at least 12 supervolcanoes scattered across the country. These supervolcanoes are capable of causing massive devastation, but thankfully, none of them are expected to erupt anytime soon. In the event of a super eruption in the United States, the country would likely be thrown into chaos. The government would scramble to evacuate the surrounding areas while trying to assess the damage. The military would be put on alert, and the country would brace for impact. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 is a prime example of the destruction that can be caused by a volcano. The explosion was so powerful that it was heard nearly 1,000 miles away. An estimated 200 million trees were destroyed, and the blast reached all the way to Canada. While it wasn't a super eruption, it caused billions of dollars in damage. So now, let's bring it back home. What if a supervolcano erupted in the Pacific Ocean? You probably imagine the immediate aftermath of the eruption would be similar to the eruption of Mount St. Helens. The explosion would shake the ground, and people would feel the tremors hundreds of miles away. Ash and debris would fill the air and block out the sun. Cities near the coast would be buried in ash, and the surrounding countries would be devastated. But what happens after that? How does it affect the rest of the world? To answer this question, we have to look at what happens when a supervolcano erupts on land. When a supervolcano erupts on land, the immediate area is devastated. The explosion blasts all the surrounding towns and cities, killing or injuring thousands of people. The shock wave from the blast can travel thousands of miles and cause even more damage. Ash and debris can fall for weeks or even months after the eruption. This ash can bury entire villages and cause the soil to become infertile. The eruption can also cause climate change, which can lead to crop failures and famine. In the long term, however, the effects of a super eruption are even more devastating. As the ash and debris settle, they can clog up rivers and disrupt water supplies. This can lead to widespread disease and even more famine. The eruption can also cause climate change, which can lead to crop failures and famine. The eruption can also cause climate change, which can lead to crop failures and famine. A super eruption can have profound implications for the entire world. The disruption of global climate patterns can lead to widespread crop failures and famine. The ash and debris from the eruption can travel around the world, causing widespread damage. The economic impact of a super eruption can be devastating. The cost of cleaning up the mess and rebuilding infrastructure can be staggering, and the loss of life and injury can cripple economies around the world. So what happens if a supervolcano erupts in the Pacific Ocean? The effects would be similar to those seen in previous eruptions, except that the ocean water would play a major role. The water would help to mitigate the effects of the blast, but it would also cause devastating tsunamis. The water would also help to disperse the ash and debris, but it would also contaminate the water supply. The water temperature would rise due to the heat from the eruption, leading to coral reef death and other ecological disaster. Imagine if the Krakatoa supervolcano in Indonesia erupted today. Krakatoa is a supervolcano located in the Indonesian province of Lampung. It is one of the most active volcanoes in the world and has a history of violent eruptions. The most famous eruption occurred in 1883, when an estimated 36,000 people were killed by the massive explosion and resulting tsunami. But what if this happened today? The initial blast wave would cause devastating damage to nearby coastal communities, killing or injuring thousands of people. The shock wave would travel across the Indian Ocean and cause tsunamis that would inundate coastal areas as far away as Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Ash and debris would fall over a wide area, disrupting air and sea traffic and contaminating water supplies. In the long term, the effects would be even more devastating. Crops would fail due to the ash and debris, leading to widespread famine. The global economy would be crippled by the disruption of trade and transportation routes. Ultimately, a super eruption in the Pacific Ocean would be catastrophic. The ocean water would help to mitigate the effects of the blast, but it would also cause devastating tsunamis. The water would also help to disperse the ash and debris, but it would also contaminate the water supply. The water temperature would rise due to the heat from the eruption, leading to coral reef death and other ecological disaster. Let's face it, we're all pretty screwed either way. If it happened today, the Pacific Ocean supervolcano would likely destroy everything. Humanity would be set back centuries, and we'd have to start from scratch. But here's the kicker. It's not just Yellowstone or Krakatoa that we have to worry about. In fact, there are at least 12 supervolcanoes scattered around the world, many of which are located near major cities or bodies of water. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that we need to be prepared. We need to have a plan in place for when the inevitable super eruption occurs. And let's be clear, it's not a matter of if it happens, but when. The real question is, are we prepared for when it does? Or will we be wiped out along with the dinosaurs? Only time will tell. Now check out this video next to find out how the universe began, or click this other video instead. But do it now.